Yo, what's going on guys, Dubs here. Welcome back to a brand new Marvel Rivals video here on the channel, and today we have the Season 3 patch note, meaning the balance changes coming in Season 3, so we can see how they plan on shaking up the meta, and who's going to be getting buffs and nerfs, along with new team-ups, bonuses, and plenty more. So, let's get things started with the Vanguards, and we're getting some changes to Emma Frost. First of all, they're reducing her telepathic pulse damage, her primary fire, at 99 energy, from 120 per second to 110, and from 150 per second to 140 per second at 100 energy. So her base damage will be the same, but it will ramp up slightly slower as it will only hit a max of 110 per second at 99, and then when you tick over to 100, it will do 10 damage per second less as well at just 140. They're also going to be reducing the diamond form damage reduction from 30% to 25%, so you will take a bit more damage in that diamond form. And they are, though, reducing the energy cost of her ultimate. I think that's because she'll be doing less damage, so it basically balances out, so you shouldn't really notice much difference there. Now we have the Thing, and the Thing is getting some pretty cool changes, including a whole new ability. So he's getting the new Battle Blitz ability. Now we saw this in the Dev Vision, and it allows the Thing to leap towards an enemy. It gives him the 25% damage reduction, and leap targeting distance to enemies is 20 meters. I think using the ability automatically activates the Stone Haymaker, and now the Stone Haymaker gets a new effect where it knocks down flying enemies. So like we saw in the Dev Vision, you can bring down flyers, and I think this is to combat that pesky flyer meta. Pretty cool change for the Thing. Venom's also getting a slight buff to increase his diving capabilities. They've increased the cellular corrosion enemy slow effect from 15% to 25%. So when you're grabbed onto the enemies, they're slowed even more, helping you to really dive on them and capitalize on your kills. Moving over to the duelist, we have Human Torch. Now, you might read these as nerfs, but it turns out he's actually going to be getting the Team Up Anchor damage boost, so it pretty much balances him out, and I think it ends up being a very slight buff. So he gets his Team Up Anchor bonus of a 5% damage boost, as he's now a Team Up Anchor for Spiderman. So all his damage is increased by 5%. So to kind of counter that slightly, they've reduced his fire cluster damage per projectile from 6 to 5.5. But with that 5% damage boost, he'll be dealing like 5.775 damage, so almost close to the 6 anyway. And they've reduced his Supernova activation shockwave damage from 80 to 75, and the Fire Tornado damage over time from 120 per second to 110 per second. But like I said, with the 5% damage increase, this becomes very minimal. And it means he still gets his damage boost on his other abilities, like his Blazing Blast and his Ground Slam. For Iron Man, they're reducing the first 2 Repulsor Blast hits from 40 to 35 and from 50 to 45 while in Armor Overdrive. So I think they recently nerfed his third hits, and now they're going to be nerfing his first and second hit, so just giving him a little bit less damage when using the Repulsor Blasts, and increasing the energy cost of his ult by a significant amount from 2,800 to 3,400. So not only doing less damage, but also it's harder to get the ult, so you're going to be seeing much less Iron Man ults in your games. For Mr. Fantastic, they're reducing his bonus health in inflated state from 400 to 350. I think that's fair enough. For Namor, they're buffing Namor. This guy still has the team up, and they're buffing him even more. You love to see it. They're increasing the Trident of Neptune projectile damage from 70 to 75, and its projectile speed from 120 to 150 meters per second. That is very significant. I think that's the same as the Moon Knight buff that we saw pretty early on. His projectile speed buff is really good for him, and it's going to be the same for Namor. It might take a little bit of time to get used to, but it's definitely going to be better. And they're increasing the Wrath of Seven Seas projectile at the same rate. For Scarlet Witch, they're reducing the maximum slow rate during her ultimate from 35% to 25%, and they're increasing its damage from 750 to 850, so it can now one-shot a Groot. So watch out, Groots. She's coming for you. For Spider-Man, he's been buffed, but this actually worked out as a nerf because he's losing the team up with Squirrel Girl. He loses his 10% damage increase, so that means all his abilities do 10% less damage, and these are just to slightly counter that. So his Get Over Here kick, when you pull yourself towards enemies, is increased from 50 to 55, but as it now has 10% less, it does the same amount. They've also increased the mid-air hit for his melee attack from 50 to 55. Again, this is basically unchanged. And then the amazing combo damage, his uppercut, has been increased from 55 to 60, which again is basically the exact same. But now, since he does 10% less damage, his spider tracers will do less damage, and his normal melee attacks also do less damage. Moving on to the Punisher, they've reduced his turret projectile damage from 12 to 10, and decreased its spell field damage from 12 to 10. So the turret is going to be less impactful, and they've also increased the energy cost of his ult from 3,400 to 3,700. So I don't think that's a crazy change. I think it's pretty fine for Punisher. I think he's going to be just fine. For Winter Soldier, they've adjusted his primary fire damage fall-off maximum at 40 meters from 60% to 70%. So he has less damage fall-off. So he's actually getting a buff here. He'll be doing more damage at that maximum 40-meter range. For Wolverine, they've increased the Feral Leap strike duration from 4 seconds to 5 seconds and increased its cooldown from 12 seconds to 15 seconds. But he is going to be getting a pretty cool team up, so we'll talk about that in a moment. Now we have these strategist changes. So they're going to be changing Invisible Woman. They're not actually buffing her healing output, but it kind of works that way because they're basically changing around some of her values so that now when you shoot your primary fire, it heals 45 instead of 40 when it's being launched outwards, but its healing is being reduced on its return from 40 to 35. So basically, it does the same amount of total healing. However, it does more healing when it's going outwards, which is normally where you're hitting pretty much all your shots. And there are chances that when the projectile returns, your teammate has moved. So it'll be more consistent at healing your teammates more. I think you will slightly notice this, but it doesn't do technically any more healing. The same is for the damage. It does 5 more damage on the way out and 5 less damage on the way in. For Loki, they've increased the energy cost of his ult from 4,000 to 4,300, so a few less ults. For Mantis, she gets a bit of a rework to her healing. It's pretty cool. Basically now, her healing flower will heal your allies by an additional 2.5% per second of their maximum health, but they've reduced its base healing from 20 per second to 12.5 per second. So this benefits the Vanguards, and I did some little examples just to show the math. So for Groot, who has 850 health, she will now give him 33.75 healing per second instead of just 20 per second. So yeah, he gets a lot more healing. And it's the same with all the Vanguards. Venom, who has 800 health, will get 32.5 per second. Even Emma Frost with 650 health will still receive 28.75 healing per second, as opposed to 20 per second. And some of the higher health duelists also get benefits from this. Mr. Fantastic, who has 375 health, still receives just over what he used to at 21.8 per second. However, your average duelist and strategist with only 275 health do receive slightly less healing now from Mantis at only 19.3 per second, but this is such a small reduction that I see this as an overall buff, as it greatly increases the amount of healing that she does for your Vanguards, which are the people you definitely want to keep healed. So I think that's a nice change. They're also changing her ultimate slightly. Her bonus max health from the ult increases from 100 to 150, but they've also increased the ultimate cost by a pretty large amount to counter that. Now we have Ultron. Now they've reduced his dynamic flight acceleration effect time from 8 seconds to 6 seconds to give him slightly less maneuverability, and they've reduced the imperative firewall bonus health to himself from 75 to 65 and from allies to 55 to 50. Now we have the new team-ups, and the team-ups really do shake things up. They're pretty incredible. First of all, we have the Human Torch Spider-Man team-up, which gives Spider-Man a whole new ability, the Inferno Blast ability, that essentially lets him shoot a new fire tracer. And this, when impacts an enemy, seems to launch you backwards, and it also deals explosive damage to the enemy and tags them with a fire tracer. This can be used like the normal spider tracer, and you can pull yourself in to attack them. And it can even be comboed with your normal spider tracer, so you can set up some wild combos using the team up and the normal spider tracer and really give the enemies a hard time. Then we also have the new Phoenix Wolverine team up. This one is absolutely nuts. First of all, Phoenix gets a 10% damage boost, but I mean, that doesn't really mean anything since she's a new hero. But Wolverine will gain the new Phoenix Warrior ability, which essentially is a new passive that every time he uses his Feral Leap, it gives him life steals so he can heal himself when he attacks, and it also sets enemies on fire around him for a short duration. So just by being stood near the enemy as you attack them, they will also take burn damage. And then we have the adjusted team-ups Obviously, the Spider-Man Squirrel Girl team up is gone and the Storm Human Torch team up is gone. But now Squirrel Girl will join the Iron Man team up, so she gets this new lock-on missile that she can throw out. And if you thought Squirrel Girl players didn't have any aim, well, now they need it even less with a lock-on missile. And we have Hela joining the Venom team up, so now when she launches her orbs, they will also release Venom tendrils that will grab and slow enemies in its radius. They've also changed some of the team-ups. The Adam Warlock team-up with Star-Lord and Mantis has had its cooldown increased from 120 per second to 135 per second. And the Venom and Jeff team-up, it now gives 100 maximum bonus health instead of 50 to the attached allies, and the link period is being increased from 3 seconds to 5 seconds, so it will apply healing for longer to your teammates. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the balance changes. Let me know what you think of the changes. Are there heroes in here that you wish were changed that haven't been? We know they are going to be changing things up in Season 3.5 as well, which will be on August 8th. So, I mean, there's going to be plenty of balance changes coming very frequently to Marvel Rivals. But I'm sure there are heroes that weren't in here that you'd love to see changed. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.